I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, welcome everybody back to West Point, Mississippi, to the home of Mossy Oak and the Gamekeeper studio.
Yeah, welcome back yourself, Bobby. We missed you last week.
Well, I missed it, but I'm really proud of you guys. It was a great podcast.
Well, thank you. We used, Hercules stood in your place as always.
I don't know how we pulled it off, but it worked.
Well, it was really good. I ended up, I listened to it and I thought, but they did a great job. They don't need me.
You missed the canned deer meat, though.
I've been scared of that ever since.
I'm telling you, it was delicious.
It was fabulous.
It was fabulous. I'm going to can some deer meat this year for sure.
Well, yeah, the podcast was great. And y'all, I never thought that on our manly Gamekeeper podcast, I would hear the word pate. So,
we followed that up with potted meat, though.
You did. You recovered good on that. Because I knew what potted meat was. I didn't know what
it makes you feel better. I've never had pate, but I've heard Sam talk about it so much. Speaking of, he's got some, I smell something going on back there, too. I think he's whooping on some wild boar pork carnitas.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we got some special guest in the studio.
Our favorite guest, old Bronson. He's a repeat victim.
Yep. So let me kind of set up today. We're going to talk about armyworms.
Oh yeah.
And again, Mississippi State is helping us. We've got Dr. Angus Cachot. Now, have I pronounced that right?
Yeah, that's right. Cachot.
Okay, Cachot.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
And of course, we got Dr. Bronson Strickland over here
in the house.
So, thank you, Mac. So I wanted to say that, we're talking about worms, and I can look around this room and relate worms to everybody. Lanny, you have a tapeworm.
Yes, my whole life.
Dudley is taking ivermectin, which is a parasite killer right now, trying to kill parasites.
Just to be sure. Parasites.
Yeah.
Just to be sure.
Mac is one of the wormiest people I know.
Yeah.
Bronson has wormed his way into yet another podcast. And then we have an entomologist expert over here.
There's so many things in common.
So worms are they're everywhere.
And they are everywhere right now.
But they're not really worms, are they?
Oh, they're caterpillars.
Well, that's
next level right there.
That's deep. That's deep. Way to go. So, before we get started, I just wanted to say that, guys need to be watching our Gamekeeper television show. It started airing on Tuesday nights. We got a couple of shows with Bronson. Speaking of worming into things. So that show's doing good. And we've done a lot with Mississippi State. We've got an old Mississippi State guy, Dr. Mike Chamberlain, is on there several times. We've dedicated a lot of shows to wild turkeys this year.
100%.
Yep.
One of our favorite subjects.
Yep. So, guys, we need y'all to watch that. And, if you're listening to this, if you're in the very far north, when we're talking about Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, those guys are getting started, about to get started planting.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure some of them already have.
Yeah.
Some people will get those brassicas in a little bit earlier than.
Yeah, that sounds like Todd Ammonroot in upper Minnesota. So it's an exciting time. There's a lot going on. And that leads us to our commercial. Mac, I think you've got something teed up, don't you?
I do. Like you said, it's getting that time to plant for our buddies above the Mason-Dixon line. And with that being said, we can't talk about planting food plots without talking about Ferminator. And so they've got this new implement that is an ATV implement. And it looks awesome. It looks really cool.
Oh, look, if they make it, it's good.
I had no earthly idea. Why didn't y'all tell me about this?
Well, we keep some things from them.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, but it is, they make the best, most durable equipment.
Yeah, it's tough stuff.
Beefy, durable stuff.
It can put up with our abuse, so put it that way.
Now, it's going to take a big four-wheeler or a UTV to pull it, but y'all go to Ferminator.com and check it out.
Yeah.
It's a great product. So thank you, Mac, on that. And so let me set the stage. We're going to do something a little different with this podcast. We're going to work with both these guys have podcasts themselves. We've got the Crop Doctors, which is recorded out of the Mississippi Delta. So we're going to share this with the crop doctors. We want to welcome all the farmers that might be listening to this because we love farmers. Absolutely. You guys are the backbone of what this country stands for. We're super fans of farmers. Then also Bronson's got a podcast called Deer University. and we're going to share that with them and work together on this. So we want to say hello to all those people, and I think this should work out, guys. We appreciate us all doing this together. So
we're working so efficiently.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we really are. So so look, and look, I've got it under a good word that the boss will be here in a few minutes.
We're talking about Armyworms. He's going to show up.
He's got a DEF CON team.
Yeah, he's literally has a tactical warfare unit that's dedicated to Armyworms. So
he's really
all built by hand. So
yeah, you'll see him with one of those nets out in a field. So look, let's get started. Let's start. Angus, let me just first say, you guys have the neatest first names. Angus, oh, that's a red-blooded, beef-eating American name. Bronson, that's a pretty manly name.
Too. That's right.
A lot cooler than Bobby, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking about changing my name.
You would have thought I'd have been a beef cattle specialist instead of an entomologist with a name like Angus, but it is what it is. And I'm actually a junior, so I have a dad named Angus and a son named Angus. There's three of us running around.
Big A and little A.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what we get a lot.
Well, look, we're hearing, it seems like this is the earliest I can remember people talking about armyworms, and it seems like they're worse this year than ever.
That sure seems thick. I mean, all the news, local news, in-state news, and regional news, I've seen it all stretching up across the Delta, up into Arkansas and Mississippi. Of course, it's just like, it's a hot topic right now because armyworms are everywhere.
What's going on?
Well, I'm not going to say that this is necessarily the earliest that we've seen them, but what's different this year is just the sheer magnitude, the numbers that we're seeing across just huge geographies. Now, that part is different. 2014, I went back and looked at my Twitter account from 2014. I hashtagged Armywormageddon. And that was when we really thought we had it bad, was in 14. And we have them every year to some degree. But this year, it makes 14, look like it wasn't even really anything. But it's a big, big, big problem. And it started probably about the 1st of June. And we've seen them earlier than that, but just not constant pressure that keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. Now, as far as what's causing the big numbers, I don't know that we really know an answer to that. They don't overwinter here. They don't have an overwintering mechanism. So they're migratory. They move from southern locations every year where they were able to, I guess, survive the winter. One thing, everybody always talks about cold winters, what effect that might have on different insect pests. And it has various effects on different insects. There's some things that we know for sure that cold winters will knock the numbers back. But we have always just sort of anecdotally had more caterpillar type pest problems behind a cold winter. And what we think is happening, and it's just a guess, it's our best guess, not just mine alone, but a collective group of us. Cold winters tend to kill off a lot of the parasitoids that take that first generation out when they come out of overwintering and they move to some wild host crop. Right now, without those natural enemies beating that population down, it just allows it to expand and really grow and move really unchecked for the most part. And that's sort of our theory right now. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems very, very likely that it may be what's going on.
Interesting.
Yeah. How do caterpillars migrate?
Well,
slowly.
Seems like we ought to be able to stop that somehow.
Well, you've probably heard about armyworms marching, and that's actually true. They eat at one source and they just kind of move across the ground. But I'm actually talking about the moth, the adult moth. Okay. They come out of overwinter and they'll start flying north.
And they lay an egg on.
They lay a egg mass. Mm-hmm. And they cover it with scales from their body. So it'll be an egg mass. It may have 50 to several hundred eggs in each mass. So when they hatch out, that's why you'll see a whole bunch of them in the area where they hatch. Now, we have some moths like attack our crops. They lay single eggs on different things. But armyworms, whether you're talking about fall armyworms, there's a lot of species of armyworms. All of them lay their eggs in masses.
And I've heard there has to be a certain humidity or a certain time of year or a certain temperature. Is that right?
Well, temperature affects the length, I guess, that most insects will stay in certain instars or different development stages of their life. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I mean, we're going to it don't play a big part. What it may play, temperature, humidity, and all that stuff there's a lot of natural viruses that take a lot of these things out when they hit these big numbers. And sometimes if the humidity gets right and environmental conditions get right, sometimes you'll see some sort of epizootic virus that'll hit the population and just wipe out mass numbers of them. And sometimes humidity and all that stuff actually does have an effect on that. It don't really play too big of a role in what we're talking about now. I mean, we're going to have armyworms.
Mm-hmm. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen to some degree. It's just a year like this year, people are in tune because it don't matter whether you're a cattle farmer with trying to, grow hay or, you got a yard in Jackson, Mississippi or Bermuda that's been ate all the way down, or the crops that I'm working in every day. I mean, they're across the board this year in everything.
Golf courses, I'm hearing.
Golf courses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, two quick questions for me, and I know everybody's got questions, but I'd love to understand like the window that we need to be watching for these things. And then also how far out or how far north do the armyworms go? So are guys in Missouri, do they need to be concerned? Illinois, that part of the world, how far out?
So right now they're having problems from Oklahoma through Texas, through Mississippi and Alabama. I talked to some of my counterparts in Georgia yesterday. They're not really seeing it. And that just may be the migratory path that they're taking. Y'all work with ducks. Y'all work with ducks and all that. We've always assumed that insects have kind of flyways too, particularly stuff like soybean loopers. I mean, the East Coast gets a strain, and then we get a strain like up through Texas and all. So, the only thing that really keeps them in check will be cold weather. So they're going to get to a point as they start rolling north. They could make it way north. I mean, they're already into Tennessee. They're having big problems. They'll probably be in Kentucky and they'll be moving north. But at some point, we're going to start hitting temperatures that's going to stop them. And that's going to be about the only thing that's going to stop them when you start getting to a point that they just can't make it. Now, there's generations that are moving north. They're essentially suicidal generations because they don't have an overwintering mechanism. So at some point, when the cold weather, frost or whatever stops them, I mean, we're not going to worry about those next year because that's a suicidal generation. We're going to have to start the process over from the south, moving north again.
And did they go through, I'm sorry for jumping in on questions, and help me understand this. So they're moving up, going south to north. These moths are flying in and laying an egg clutch. They hatch into these larvae. If there's not enough predation in my mind or whatever, they continue to thrive. Those in turn into moths and fly further north. Is that right?
That's right. And there'll be some local.
So that's how they're marching. They're actually going through a bunch of different life cycles.
They're going to be rolling north, and there'll be some local dispersion too. So we're growing some of our own, but it's a sort of a constant move north. And you can track that, talking to people. You can see it on social media, whatever.
And that's the march.
No, that's not really the march. When you hear about armyworms marching, we're literally talking about the caterpillars. Mm-hmm. When they eat a food source, they'll march.
Right. I've seen them move across the field.
Yeah.
But the way they're getting further north latitude is actually laying eggs and those hatching and flying further north. Gotcha.
So, guys, we got Toxie here. He just walked in.
How you doing?
This is
Angus Cachot.
Nice to see you. Good to see you.
So, Toxie, we got started and we brought you an entomology net. I thought you might want to have one.
Is that the technical name for that?
That's exactly what it is.
Yep. He's got one.
10 years probably. So.
Yep. So here we go. We got Toxie Hayes in the house. Now we can really get down to business with some good questions. Toxie, as we were telling you earlier, he fights armyworms like nobody you've ever met. He's got a whole little rig that he gets after them with. So he's got a lot of insight into this and where we're going. But if we could kind of circle back to where we were with Lanny's question there, but where's that window? Is it?
You want to just start back over with the?
Well, let's start with the window of when these things need to start watching for them, and that's probably early to mid-July.
Well, this year we started getting our first calls in South Mississippi the 1st of June.
Yeah.
So, and then we knew when we were getting those calls, and we were getting a lot of them, we knew it was going to start moving north. And it didn't take long. It was just a couple of weeks later, they had hit the Highway 82 corridor. And just the last couple of weeks, they had already made it into Tennessee. But typically in Mississippi, some of the southern hay producers may see some as early as late May, depending on the year. Wind currents or whatever that helps them move north. But this year, it probably started about the 1st of June.
Wow. Well, it does seem like here our phone started ringing a little bit earlier than normal.
No doubt.
Yeah. So are you seeing them on your places?
Oh, yeah.
They're everywhere. I mean, I think y'all.
But we haven't, the longer I live, the more I wait till the last minute to do things. So we really aren't doing any millet till August. We're just not starting, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Because, just like last year, we, flew all the millet on, went through all that expense and time and trouble in the main, our main, sanctuaries. And, we had a big rain. It headed out. It just looked great. And we had a big rain. It was still warm. That stuff will just, it'll germinate on the still in a pod. It's just, you can run so fast, or deer or hogs especially destroy it. So we're waiting late. But I've never seen, or never heard the stories like I've been hearing for the last couple of weeks. Cuz sent me a picture of his, and they ran out of grass and they jumped on his corn. They destroyed his corn. I mean, he sent me a corn stalk and a picture of about a foot of the corn stalk and some shredded leaves and stuff. There's probably 20 worms in that little section. You could just see they just destroyed his corn. So,
and he had a good looking crop too.
Oh, he was so proud of it. That's his life revolves growing that 10-acre cornfield by his house.
Yeah. So Angus, we got a guy, you probably know him, Keith Baggett. He's from Louisiana. He works with Helena, and he stays in touch with us. But he had sent me a message the other day that they're battling them in rice this year. And he alluded to that these worms, they weren't able to kill them with traditional pesticides, that there was something going on with these.
I think the pyrethroids are a little weak this year or something.
Yeah.
That's the rumor I heard.
Well, and I didn't know how much about all this, how deep in the weeds you wanted to get with this or not.
Deep.
But,
Well, I can tell you,
okay, so
deep in it.
I just want to make sure we can relate it to everybody out there,
sure,
and not just the farmer only, but deep.
Because that's what we're talking about in relation to food plots. You were just talking about, we hadn't mentioned that yet, that we're planting waterfowl forage right now, out there.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're really looking at.
As far as the waterfowl forage, planting Guy's Choice.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been, we kind of changed a lot of people around here, and there's a lot of people doing what we've been doing. And, a lot more business for the local co-op, for us locally, selling Guy's Choice. And, I told them 10 years ago, I said, if you're not prepared to spend the money to protect it from armyworms, you're wasting your money. And then John at the co-op was just tell me, he said, I told them everybody what you said, and they just came back and crying. I lost 20 acres. I had 20 acres of beautiful millet. It was gone in like 3 days. That's what's going to happen. You might as well just, for whatever reason, millet like that. More than anything I've found, he can verify that or not. There's anything tender, probably with a thin cell wall, I'm sure they're attracted to. But if you're not prepared to do that, you might as well just not even do it,
Is that what you're experiencing, Angus?
Well, yeah, obviously they love millet. Back up on the rice a minute. No, it's not uncommon at all to get them in rice, but what's uncommon again is just the sheer number of acres that have them this year. But your question about pyrethroids, kind of back up just a minute. So we're dealing with fall armyworms, but there's two strains. There's what we call a rice strain, which is sometimes called the grass strain. That's what we're dealing with mainly. But they also got what they call a corn strain, which is what we see in cotton and a lot of times in corn and grain sorghum and stuff like that. And you can't tell them apart. They got to do DNA sequencing to tell them apart. We tell them apart by the host that they're on. If they're starting in your pastures, Bermuda, or if they're in rice or whatever, if they're coming out of grass in your soybeans, we typically say that's the grass strain. And in the past, the grass strain has been extremely easy to control with stuff like pyrethroids. 100% with low to mid rates of pyrethroids. This year, I would say I'm probably averaging 50 calls a day minimum just on armyworms. And my phone's sitting there been buzzing the whole time we're here. And but this year we're not on average, and I keep up with it. Everybody I talk to, we're probably averaging 40 to 70% control. Sometimes that may be enough, but if you're dealing with 10 gazillion and you leave 30%, you still lost everything.
Yeah, that's 3 gazillion.
Yeah, 3 gazillion. So
that's good math.
But that's
what we're doing. That's more than you want, I promise you.
Yeah, so the question is, why are we not controlled and we always have before? Well, there's a couple theories there. There's really only 2 answers. One is we have resistance with pyrethroids. Well, that's Probably not likely, but it may be. The other is we have corn strain mixed in with rice strain. They've always been harder to control with pyrethroid. We've dealt with that in cotton and stuff like that for years. That's probably the more likely thing. And we're making some collections because there's people that can do this analysis and tell us what strain. And that's just academic thing that we're doing. But at the end of the day, the question is, okay, how do I control them? So we've changed our recommendations up. We're doing a lot of different things right now, but I work row crops. I mean, that's what I do. So, I can tell you a lot of things that'll control them, but that don't necessarily mean the average person that has a food plot or a duck hole or whatever else has access or, can buy that kind of stuff. But there are some things, and we can talk about that when we get to that point that we can do that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, because, again, related to everybody out there, because there are a smaller percentage of our following customers that have every bit the sophistication and resources of a big farmer, But they're also the ones doing the most and covering the most ground. And quite honestly, a lot of them are the ones that own the land that you lease, and they're taking care of it. They have those resources. We should speak to them because they could do anything to protect what they've done. But then, everybody, even if you just got one food plot somewhere and you want to protect it, how do we talk to that? And one of the things is always in the back of my mind, two questions here, and you just saying. One was, what would be kind of a general recommendation for something that might take care of either strain or any other, maybe there's even some other variant of worm. There's a lot of worms that look like an armyworm that there's a black one that'll eat and shred all our ferns. I don't know what it is. It doesn't even eat anything else around it, but it looks just like a black armyworm. So there's different things. What would be the recommendation for people in general for something that on average would, because, the pyrethroids, I guess grizzly is one of those. It's got a lot of pyrethrin. Isn't that the right chemical name?
Grizzly's one of them.
Yeah, and it would be like if you wanted to just smoke them right then. That's what they recommended. But if that's not working, I've had the best luck with. We're not here to talk about any specific, and obviously recommend any specific brand name or whatever. But we should talk about them so people recognize it. The things that are absorbed into the leaf and the plant. And as I guess it was maybe Bernie or somebody worked over there said, next bite they take, that's it for them. So it's not like it kills them on contact, but it's so protective. And it, even with as long as you've gotten it in and it's rain fast in like an hour or two, I've never had to go back and respray much at all. Other than if you spray when plants are tiny, 3-4 inches, there's just not enough surface area and intake as they get bigger to still protect them. But if I've gotten my millet to, 9 inches or more and spray, like Intrepid is a common one that we use.
Troubadour.
Everybody around here kind of uses that one. It's just, there's a bunch of them. I've had great success with that myself. Now, we may
What's
be
the chemical name of Intrepid? Do we know?
Methoxyphenicide.
Okay.
I was just fixing to say that. He beat me to it.
I'm trying to still figure out what that P word was pronounced to.
Pyrethroids.
So, I'm going to listen to him, but I'm just trying to, my experiences, so maybe that people can relate to that. But I'm telling you right now, we're going to air this next week. You better be listening because I feel like, and he can tell us that it's going to be a bigger bleed off into the early food plot stuff. They'll wipe your cereal grains out just as fast as anything on the planet. And I think September, if something doesn't change, is going to be one of the worst early food plot places. And so what is the other thing I wanted to add and let him talk was like, think about this. You're spraying something so deadly. You got to be so careful with it. But you're spraying it on a food plot or something that you're expecting deer to eat the next day.
That's a good point.
So environmentally conscious has got to be number one for us.
100%.
So that's why this is like, of course, he's got experience with cattle grazing and stuff too. That's what I want to do. A wildlife person who wants to be sure he doesn't plant his food plots coming up in a couple of weeks and just lose them overnight. I want to be sure we've covered that.
Yeah. And especially with these does with young fawns.
Yes.
Those are.
And I've said enough to ask questions for now.
Okay, you got all the questions.
Well, so the first thing, you got to be careful about making recommendations of insecticides
Yes.
to such a broad group of people. I mean, I grew up hunting, fishing, doing this and my stuff my whole life. Now I'm in ag. I mean, I know how to walk out there. I know how to calibrate a sprayer, and I know how to be safe and do that kind of stuff. And most people that are farmers or tied to ag in some way can do the same. But then you got people in the middle that know a little bit, and you got people that don't know anything that's going to go out there and spray stuff that could potentially be dangerous to yourself. Now, the one thing that would stop some of the problems is the pyrethroids and some of the stuff that we've been talking about. They're restricted use pesticides. You can't even go buy them unless you have an applicator, a private applicator's license.
Right.
So those people are not going to be able to have access to those products anyway. But kind of getting back to, so you need to be careful when you tell somebody to do something, because I'm telling you, I talk to people every day in pastures or whatever that they really don't know what they're doing at all. And they don't think they understand that some of these pesticides that we're spraying are dangerous. I mean, they're mixing them with their hand, everything else. So you got to be super, super careful with this stuff. They're not used to that. So it's not their fault. They just don't know that. But when you was talking about stuff that lasted a long time and stuff that was quick, depending on the class of insecticide, the pyrethroids it's a class of, there's a whole bunch of them that are labeled with a million different names of generics and everything else. They're very quick acting. They're going to kill stuff really quick, right? So, I mean, in a couple hours, you'll see worms kicking on the ground, or what you're going to be able to kill out of that population. But then you got the stuff you mentioned, Troubadour, Intrepid, some of the methoxyfenicide products. Those products are growth regulators. They're a little slower, but the beauty of those, for one, they're not restricted use. Anybody can buy it. Now, the unfortunate thing is because we're having this big run on rice and soybeans and all that, farmers are buying it up. Now, if you're going to have trouble finding this stuff, I'm just going to tell you very soon. We just got a crisis exemption.
Call co-op, Bobby.
Yeah, we just got a crisis exemption yesterday to use that product in rice, and I can tell you it's fixing to get sucked up. So that's something else, but that's a whole other story. But these products will tend to last 10, 14 days or longer, giving you residual. Yeah. So anything that's hatching into it that you might not have killed, that'll help you there. And again, it's not restricted use. It's fairly safe as insecticides go, but there's a couple more. There's some that's in the diamide class of chemistry, stuff like Prevathon or Besiege. There's products like that. They have a super long residual, but they're a lot more costly. So there's things to balance out. If you're a hay producer, they don't want to do that because they're trying to make a profit. Right. If you got a duck hole, it don't matter what it costs. You want a duck hole.
That's right.
So those products, I think those products, like Prevathon or whatever, would fit those situations good, because here's the biggest problem with food plots. You're not looking at them every week. You plant them and you might get by there 2 or 3 weeks later.
We're going to bring that up.
Yeah, and that's the problem. If you were there every 3 days, you could catch them. And that's the problem everybody's always got with food plots getting ate up by armyworm.
Yes, and when they're small, you don't have any time. I mean, I remember the big duck sanctuary was probably 120 acres worth of millet in one hole, just like looking across a bay. And if we would have had our net back then, we would have probably caught it. But I went on a Saturday, looks great. Didn't see anything really being eaten or anything. Tuesday, it was all gone. Like we had sprayed hot Roundup on it. And there were so many worms, it looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. And they were even trying to eat that naughty old gator weed stuff that grows. And they just, that fast. They found something that good, and 100 and something acres were gone in like 3 days. But it was so short, you don't have time. Now, if you've got a crop that's a foot or two already, you've got more time. But my advice to people growing duck food right now, you better check it every other day.
Yes, great point.
Because when it's young, they'll wipe it out so fast. You don't have any time.
So you're checking ag crops. They're checking them every day.
Yeah, well, twice a week, a lot of them.
Twice a week, a lot of them.
Yeah, so you got to handle
Great
them.
point. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's something else that people need to really, really remember, and this is really important when you're talking about timing. It don't matter whether you're talking about an armyworm, a cotton bollworm, or whatever. Caterpillars, most of them are typically during the caterpillar stage is going to live 12, 14 days. They're going to go through like 5 different instars. They're going to molt and go to the next stage until they pupate and turn into a moth, right? Well, the last 3 days of their life as a caterpillar, they'll eat 90% of all the food they're going to eat their entire life as a caterpillar. Ooh. So if you walk into your food plot and you got 1/4-inch worms, you got a little time to think about this. Mm-hmm. If you walk into your food plot and you got 3/4-inch worms, in a couple of days, it could be gone. It could be all gone. You got to be quick. You got to take action fast. So that gives you some sense of the urgency of how quick you need to deal with this.
That's why we should sell these things or give them away or something. These entomology nets seriously are the best tool that we've ever had, simply because you can rake and see the tiny little worms way before, just walking out there with your eyeballs. And it makes a huge difference.
So you're just catching that thing and just swiping the top of the millet?
Yes. Well, I just put it at ground level and rake across whatever. If you've got a bunch of tiny little plants, I'll go around the plot, but you can see, even they'll be in there. It's by far made a huge difference in us, because so many times we're like, because I want my crop to get big enough so then when I spray it, it's protected. Mm-hmm. If I have to protect it at 3 inches, I'm going to have to spend the money again. But when it's little, you better go take that net and check it every day or two, or you'll lose it when it's young.
So Angus, how do you use the net, or what are you looking for when you first go to a field?
So I do it 3 ways. Of course, the sweep net is important. The first thing I do when I walk into a field, there's what I call indicator grasses. There's certain things armyworms like a lot better than others. Now, they'll eat about anything. If they eat the stuff they really like, then they're going to move the stuff they don't like. Bermuda, crabgrass, all the brown top millet, signal grass. That's the kind of stuff they're going to probably go to first. First thing I do, if I just see the white etching on the leaf, that's a sign that they're there. Mm-hmm. The sweep net, of course, is great. Now, however, with this heat we've been dealing with lately, a lot of times during the heat of the day, they'll literally be on the ground surface. So I don't always rely only on a sweep net. That'll give you an idea of what's there, no doubt. But sometimes I can part the grass back, and you'll see hundreds of them just on the soil surface also, and they'll move up at different times. But the sweep net is easy. It's something that a lot of people can do. You don't have to have a lot of experience. But I sweep, and I hit the ground, drag the ground on short stuff, depending on the size of the crop. So the first thing is those etching on the leaf. If you see the etching on the leaf, you better look closer.
So are you pulling up in a field, and are you seeing wasps? Are you seeing birds? Or are there other indicators that you say, oh, there's going to be a problem right here?
Birds are a good one. If you drive by your pasture and it's full of blackbirds, egrets or whatever.
Robins? I've noticed robins in our yard, and the wasp for sure.
Yeah, anything. If you see a bunch of birds in a field, this right now with what we're going through, you better go out there and look at your field or in your yard or whatever, because they're there eating armyworm.
I just thought of something that's more important than our food plots. Way more important than anything in this business, and that's our kids. And so people at home with yards, what is the protocol for them,
to treat?
Yeah, as far as being at the end of the day, I'd much rather have a dead yard than anything make our kids sick or whatever. So that's why I don't know there's what the most common safe things. I remember as a kid, they'd have to part us out of the way for baseball or football practice or something. And here comes a guy with a spray rig with 7. And he was like, hey, y'all go back to playing in 15 minutes. I'll be fine. So I know that's probably one of the safer ones because it's been used forever, but it's probably worth mentioning in the context and getting his advice, what their protocol is for people's yards.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, so first, of course, entomology is a super big, broad topic, and we all have our specialty areas, and we all know a little bit about everybody else's. Mine is row crops. But this crosses over to a lot of different stuff. I don't work lawns, I guess. I answer a lot of questions on lawns, but some of the things that are the safest type products that we just talked about in food plots are also the safest to be used in lawns. And the stuff that we were talking about that can be dangerous, danger is sort of relative. I can have a bottle of poison sitting on the counter, but if I don't ever go mess with it, I'm okay. So a lot of times if somebody's spraying your lawn with something dangerous, they're going to say there's stuff on the label. And then let me mention that too. The label is the guiding thing that we need to use for everything.
Absolutely.
The words on the label, you're bound to that kind of stuff. But if it tells you can be back in there in 12 hours, that means it's been evaluated and it's safe to be back in there in 12 hours. So we have certain products that are obviously safer than others. But you mentioned something, Toxie, earlier that I really want to hit on. You said, hey, we're worried about if we spray this stuff and we got stuff grazing on it.
Yes.
Well, that is an obvious concern. But the things that we're talking about that are labeled in pastures and stuff, most of the products that we're talking about have a 0-day grazing or hay restriction. Most of them. Some of them have 0-day grazing, but a 7-day hay or whatever. So 7, you mentioned 7. 7's 14 days though.
Wow.
For 7. But that's the only one that's really that far out. and we don't use as much 7 anymore as we used to. But the products that we've mentioned and the products that we're talking about, it would be safe for your wildlife to come right back in there behind it, or we wouldn't use it, especially where we got cattle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, when we're spraying, it's in a wetland area. It's going to drain. Of course, it'll drain off anyway, even if it's not. So, but it's just a consideration to be conscious of ecology there. But then the food plot was where I was really more concerned because, if it doesn't change the taste in some way or smell, they'll be right back in it that night. And so that's why I wanted to ask the question, because
can't keep them out.
Now, one other thing you hit on I think is worth mentioning, although maybe not many people can do that, but the safest thing whatsoever to you personally is hire somebody else that really knows what they're doing to do it. Now, that's not really available everywhere. There's probably lawn services that can do your yard maybe. But he's right, boy, you got to be even if something's labeled and you think it's really safe. I was just having a conversation with Tom this morning about spraying chufas, and I was like, treat even some of this stuff that's so safe you can use it as an aquatic herbicide and fish and swim right behind it. It's so safe. Every chemical, treat it like it kill you. Be that safe with everything.
And when in doubt, call your extension agent.
Yes.
And that's what they're there for. Those labels can be daunting to read.
Yes.
When in doubt.
Yes. Treat them all with that kind of respect and
call a specialist.
Yeah. Don't just run out there and do it and let the wind drift on you or whatever. Just, you got to be, if you treat just like the fire, if you treat everything like could get away from you or it could harm you, then you'd be so much safer.
Sure. So Bronson, we're not going to you're not going to get out of here unscathed. Now, I want to ask you a couple questions. As you're doing a lot with deer research. How do these armyworms and the potential for problems, are they factoring into decisions that you guys are making for your early fall crops, late summer crops?
Yeah, to some extent. Of course, I don't get near the feedback Angus gets on this. And one of the problems, I guess I can say a problem, is that that we want to solve is we don't have as many people planting warm season plots as they do cool season plots. And so, we're generally, you can get into the cool season with this, but generally we're dealing with people that have a warm season plot and then they're having an issue with it. And Angus, I got to, based on us talking on the way over here, I got to thinking we're talking about preference. Are you you're never going to be shielded from this entirely? Are you going to minimize the opportunity for an overwhelming invasion if you only had a warm season plot that was a legume and didn't have grasses or not adjacent to a pasture of grasses or Bermuda grass or something like that? Do you think you'd decrease the likelihood?
I think you would decrease the likelihood, but it don't make you 100% that it's not going to happen. And soybeans is a great example. Armyworms will go straight to soybeans with no grass present. They will do that, but we don't see that a lot. This year, we've got a number of calls where they went straight to clean soybean fields, but we have treated a tremendous number, and I'm using soybeans as an example because it's a legume. Mm-hmm. But we had a lot, it gets rainy and the farmers can't get in and control the grass. The middles grow up with grass. The armyworms start on the grass. Then we go in and we make an application to control the grass. Well, those armyworms don't have anywhere to go. Well, they might not have intended to eat those soybeans, but if they have no choice, you come back in a week, you don't have any soybeans left. So it's the same thing with these legumes, these clovers and stuff.
Wheat beans.
Wheat beans are horrible right now. We're spraying them all.
Yep. Talking to Matt about it. I've been trying to get him to spray for 2 weeks, and he's like, as soon as I get a second, I'll do it. You're in line, and it's been 2 weeks. And he's still that backed up. And so many of us, like all these farmers, a lot of more farmers planted. If you look around wheat beans than normal, at least around here, eyeballing it, and that wheat's still there and germinated with all this rain. Yep. And they just jumped on it. And when they ate that, they just started destroying people's beans. And if the beans aren't but 3 to 6 inches tall, they can wipe them out pretty quick too. Think about your livelihood. So
Angus, are these worms attracted more to highly fertilized food sources or more tender? What is the immediate attraction?
I think that's typically how we think about it, that the most lush, pretty stuff tends to get the first or the most infestations or whatever. A year like this year, I rarely get them in my yard because my yard's horrible. I got about a 4.8 pH, but I do get them in my yard. But yeah, the stuff, obviously, I mean, heck.
There's a man wiser than just his trade right there.
Yeah. So no, they tend to like stuff just like deer, they like stuff that has better fertility. I think that it's really what's attractive to that moth. And believe it or not, they can figure some of this stuff out. I wish I knew how, but they do. But that don't mean that you're immune to them if you got a yard like mine. It don't mean that at all. But they do like the well-fertilized, well-kept stuff. And
golf courses,
and all that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Dudley, what about you? You got a question?
Well, I was thinking, I keep hearing, spray this, spray that. Are there any ways you can get around that? Not everybody is into spraying.
Sure.
We've discussed planting times, or maybe other species you can plant that they don't bother. I know we talked about it earlier, but I know we've had some luck planting as late as September 1st when we're discussing millet.
Yeah.
And
that's kind of been, and I can speak to experience of 20 years of that probably now. Here, I've just kind of used Labor Day. And we planted after Labor Day and gotten lucky and got pretty good seed production. But that's pretty much a cutoff point. But
then another thing I think about is like ducks, for example, they eat a lot of insects and invertebrates. So are there any chemicals that do not affect the insects later on, or that kind of thing? I always think about that. I mean, ducks love eating invertebrates.
Are you talking about from the standpoint of insects that might help you control, beneficials help control the armyworm?
No, I'm saying like you
Is
spray
it a problem for the ducks if they eat an insect that's been?
No, I'm saying like you spray your duck hole in June. Are you still going to have insects in later stages dying that a duck could have eaten? So are there any products that don't have as long of a residual that you can use in your duck impoundments that aren't going to infect those invertebrates later on, like in February when the ducks eat heavily on invertebrates?
Okay, so the products that we're talking about that we have talked about that have that residual activity, we're talking about 2 to 3 weeks tops. We're not talking about anything that's going to affect the duck time you flood those things up. That wouldn't be an issue at all.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And also the ones we're talking about with those long residuals tend to be the absolute safest anyway, even if a duck or whatever ate it right behind it.
Right.
I would think there would be no real issue.
I know that Intrepid product is just an IGR, which is an insect growth regulator.
Right.
So it typically doesn't allow that insect to go to the next stage of life development.
I'm impressed.
Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why it's actually going to be a little slower too, because if you're 3 to 4 days between a molt, it's going to be, the insect's not going to die until it molts.
Right.
It's a molting accelerator on that one.
Okay.
But yeah. So they're a little slower, but they work.
Which is also why that net's so important, because you can catch them when they're little bitty. And when you catch them when they're largely little bitty ones, then what he's talking about is the way to go.
Yeah.
And I have another observation. We were talking about this earlier too. We had such a crazy cold front back in February across the Southeast, and there were dead birds everywhere. And I wonder if that has anything to do, because birds eat moths. Yeah. You were saying
my guess is that
maybe that's not
probably don't have a lot to do with it. In the insect that we're particularly talking about don't overwinter here anyway, so they wouldn't have been here. And where they do pupate is under the soil surface, wherever they happen to be able to survive the winter. So it probably wouldn't have an effect. I don't see birds having of course, anything helps,
Yeah.
The numbers that we're talking about, no, I don't think even the ones you see in your field, it's not enough to make that big of a difference, but happy to see it.
So
interesting.
The question also is like, so I told the example of, and for me, it's a giant place, 100 acres of millet wiped out. How do they find it and multiply that fast? That's the one thing about it. I know that's why they're called armyworms and how they do it. Do they moths find it, replicate that fast because they can single that out? I mean, they just exploded when they hit something they liked.
Well, and I think we may have talked about this right before you stepped in.
Okay, I missed
a
that
little
part.
bit, not in depth at all. But so they lay their eggs in masses. So they lay a clutch of, it could be 50, 100, 200, 300 eggs. So every single moth is laying that. So you think if they hatch, even with 50% natural, mortality of that, you're still talking about every single egg mass, multiple larvae that's going to come out of that. So it don't take long if the numbers are extremely high to have just overwhelming numbers that are hatching out.
All at the same time, evidently. It's just
pretty much.
So you would say it has more to do with the moth is actually recognizing the kind of food source for its young more than the worms sense it in March or whatever.
Yeah, and before you came in, he was telling us that these moths are migrating.
Yeah.
They're coming from South Mississippi, South Louisiana.
And they work their way north.
Yeah, Chris Hawley's he's got I think a blue light that he can shine like a kind of a spotlight blue light in tomato worms will show up in your garden, or the armyworms in their pasture will show up and kind of glow at night. I've never heard of that before.
Man, I got to have one of those.
I haven't heard of that either. Actually.
He said it's like a bright ultraviolet thing that you can see some, but he used to always go and check because they got so much pasture land where they live. And he would ride. He said, if you go at night with your headlights kind of on dim and ride through, you'll see swarms of armyworm moths in your Bermuda grass. He said, you'll know it's fixing to happen by watching for those moths. But he said, you really got to go at night to see a lot of them because, like you said, heat of the day, they kind of go hide in the shade for.
Lanny, you got a question?
Well, I think everybody's kind of skipped around, so I was wanting to kind of really nail down some stuff.
Oh, come on.
I mean, hey, but
that's how we roll.
That's right.
Yeah, so understand identifying if you have a problem. You need to check your crops on a very regular interval. Look on the ground, take a net, see if you've got them. There's obviously a lot of different treatment options that you need to read the label on and take precaution on. But like we've all skipped around, like safe times to plant. Is there a nighttime temperature? If temperatures get below a certain area, is it safe to plant after that? Just trying, because I know we talk about planting after, Labor Day here. But we base a lot of things on soil temperature and nighttime temperatures. Is there a specific safe zone from a temperature range?
And you're talking fall food plots too, obviously.
Yeah.
Not
I mean,
obviously not duck food.
We know we all got them now, and everybody needs to wait to when do we need to plant?
Yeah, because we don't get a frost until November.
Yeah, we got to plant before November.
And our average frost date is what, November 6th, November 4th? The long-term average, of course, it can vary, within a few weeks of that. But frosts that's what's going to stop armyworms because, again, they can't handle the cold. So if you could predict when it was going to be, but that you have an average there. But we're going to be planted before that regardless, So
there's not a safe zone. You just got to watch it.
But now, of course, the further you get toward that, the better you're going to be. But
there's always that chance.
Just like all these hunters and fishers around Mississippi, when we get time to go, we got to go after Labor Day. That's what we do. Right. And we try to hold back. We actually think about armyworms every year because we work with this stuff, and we try to push it as far as we can. But trying to get all these members of a hunting club together when you have a work day, it might be on September 10th, and that's when we're going to plant. So you got to but getting out there and watching it, and you can take care of this problem, but you just got to be ready to deal with it if you got the problem.
Yeah, I know he's always sitting on go this time of year, ready to deal with it. Yeah, but he's got his rig.
I mean, the waterfowl thing is such a different management process because if we don't have food, we've missed a whole year. They're going to move on. Yeah. I mean, if you have deer or turkeys on your place, they'll still be around if you lose a food plot or two. So it's not as life and death. And if you want to protect them, you should study, you should listen, you should, especially people that really know what they're doing. But for ducks, it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why, a crop like corn planted earlier, established and big before but they'll even, they'll destroy that if you're not careful. Or maybe grain sorghum, something that you plant before the invasion hits in, like he said, maybe June now. Would probably be preferential. But if you're planting we have a run every year this time of year, and nobody can get Guy's Choice, nobody can buy any of these millets, and everybody's learning that they can get really, really good, which I love because we're feeding more waterfowl. But if it's millets, which are so easy to grow and so quick turnaround and so good in late summer, you better be prepared over any crop you grow to deal with your worms, or you will have nothing left.
Yeah.
Well, here's something else you could do. You know, I'm just sitting here thinking about it because one of the problems is, like, I got one hunting club, it's a 2-hour drive or whatever. You go check your club, you didn't bring your sprayer with you.
Right.
So you get there, you see you got a problem. What are you going to do? You're going to drive 2 hours home? You're probably going to try
You
it.
better.
If they're that bad. But these products that we're talking about, like methoxyfenicide, Intrepid, or Prevathon, that have these long residuals, you can preemptively put those out. So, I mean, if you got 2 or 3, 4 inch, weed or whatever coming up, I mean, you can make that application and buy yourself some time. You wouldn't want to make a application with something like a pyrethroid, then it only lasts a few days and the worms are not there.
Right.
But these things that have residual, you can put those out preemptively. And people do that a lot in duck holes. My colleagues that have duck holes, they do it all the time and they never have problems. But they're not waiting on an infestation to come. They're
just spraying
preemptively
every
taking
time.
care of it.
That's me.
Right.
He's talking about me. If he gets, but I mean, I'm trying to get it tall enough where it actually is kind of like having the vaccine.
Right.
So if you spray a 3-inch plant preemptively, you probably hadn't, by the time it grows a foot tall, that's 4 times or probably exponentially bigger and diluted more. So my only point in saying this is if you can watch it and let it get maybe a foot tall before you spray it, like you said, then you probably are going to be good. It'll be so big before, it's probably make it seed before they get on it. I've seen them just shredding grown full size, 3-4 foot tall millet. But it's already put on seed heads and it's too late. They can't stop it then.
So it's basically you're paying the insurance when you put it down like that.
I've had so many people ask me as they get more and more frustrated all over the place. It's like, I just want to go ahead and spend the money and spray something when I plant my crop and be done with it. What do I use for that? I said, there is nothing. Now, I'll defer to him. Today, as I know it, there's nothing you can do that. You have to wait at a minimum to have a plant there.
Yeah, you need to wait till you have a plan. One of these products, I don't want to get too much into it, but there is a little systemic activity with the Prevathon product that I mentioned. In other words, it will move into the plant somewhat, and we played with some things on that, but it's a $high product. And I think at the end of the day, the best thing is just like what you said, get a little size on your plant, look at them, and then preemptively put some of these products out once you got enough leaf coverage to take up, to get some spray on it actually.
And if you have this net, maybe, like you said, we plant them, it couldn't be back to your food plot in the fall till 2 weeks from now. With the net, anybody can do it for you. Just tell them what to do and tell them what to look for. Once you've ever seen them one time, then you'll see them in the net. If it's real small, like I said, drag it across the ground, drag it a longer area, go check different spots in the plot. And it could just be somebody who's still there locally. Anybody can check for you.
Sure. So let me just make sure I understand this right. So like Toxic's got this, we call it the sanctuary. And from time to time, it has had major armyworm problems, as evidenced by the storyteller.
Every year, if we don't spray it.
Right.
Every year.
So those worms that are there eating, they're not going to survive the winter. There's no eggs that are laid, and they're coming back. Those are all migrating again back from somewhere deep in the south.
Yeah. I mean, there'll be some local dispersion, if they happen to turn into a moth before we got a freeze or whatever. But they are kind of rolling. They kind of roll north, but they are dispersing out all at the same time. It's sort of getting bigger where they at, but pushing north. But every one of them, when we get to that last generation, that they're going to be able to make it and they're going to keep going until they get to the freeze or frost or whatever. Those are essentially suicidal generations. They're not going to reverse migrate back to where they started. We're going to deal with the local populations that start over the next year coming up.
Yep. And you think all that's underwater, it killed them? Well, it doesn't take many. And when do they start the process every year? Maybe May?
Our first really calls that I got this year was about the 1st of June, which is a little early, but we did have some hay producers in South Mississippi that had them as early as mid to late May.
But they're, if you just go hit the calculator, if 1 equals, what are you saying, maybe 300, cut it in half, say go with 150. 1 equals 150. They do 150 times 150.
Yeah.
And then whatever that is by 150.
Exponential.
Exponential.
Yeah, so that's right. It's like a crazy exponential number. So that's why I was asking, when do they actually probably start the process each year? And as soon as it's warm enough, I guess, May maybe.
As soon as it's warm enough, they come out of where they survived the winter,
Right.
And and they start moving. And sometimes fronts that move, southerly fronts that are moving north.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can pick up. I mean, they'll get in these wind currents and they can go way north at times. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Are they like on
wouldn't
the
take a
coast
lot
or
of-
like South America?
Typically, we don't have much. There's probably in some years survival on like the Mississippi Gulf Coast, but we're really talking about places like the coastal bend of Texas and places like that we don't really get freezes, very often. And maybe in South America or Mexico as well. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, so look, Mac's got a question, and there's no telling where this question will go, but it'll probably.
It'd be one.
I do. So we've talked about migratory waterfowl, and one bird that's special to us is a migratory the dove. So how do armyworms affect, a sunflower field, or can you treat a sunflower field the same way you would treat, a stand of God's choice?
So, again, I don't commercially work sunflowers, but like any other, it is a commercial crop in places. We grow it for wildlife exclusively here, but there are products, and I can't tell you off the top of my head what they are, that are legal to apply to sunflowers to control various pests. So if somebody had a question or they happen to have a problem with any insect, they don't necessarily have to be armyworms. I wouldn't expect a lot of armyworms in sunflowers, but you may get them. I mean, you very well could get some if they moved off of grass or whatever else. But you could refer to the labels. It's pretty easy to do searches on Google. Hey, control whatever on sunflowers. It's going to start pulling products up, and you can look at the labels. But there are products labeled in sunflowers, just like tobacco or any other crop you can think of, to control insect pests.
The only good thing I can think about that's coming out of these armyworms is it might help some turkey poults.
Yeah, I've seen them. We had a big outbreak one year at the camp in Alabama because the yard's just like common Bermuda grass. And they smoked it. It was just dead brown. But the poults that are raised around there were in the yard every day, just wearing them out, you're right. It's not worth losing everything.
Sure.
Yeah. I'd give up some Bermuda grass.
I made the mistake of planting a brassica plot too early about 10 years ago. I think I planted on August 15th, just experimenting a little bit, and armyworms got in it. It looked like the ground was moving, and you would run the turkeys out, and then you'd come back 10 minutes later and they'd be back in the field. So
that's got to be a good high protein food source. So what questions are we not asking that we should? Bronson, you raising your hand over there. Is there something you've got?
Yes, I've got one for Angus here, and I think this is good because you deer hunt and you plant food plots and you deal with this. So, and all we can deal with is history and the averages and so forth. So we have to go back and forth between, traditionally, October is the driest month. And so we have the kind of like Dudley was saying, you might want to plant early, but then you go 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes with no rain. So people always ask me, do you roll the dice and plant early? And maybe you get caught with armyworms, or maybe you get caught with a really, really dry October, or do you just avoid that and wait till the end of October and plant then? And possibly you diminish the opportunity of armyworms, and you're closer to when we usually are going to get reliable rainfall. Not a good answer for bow hunters, because I know they want October 1st. They want a standing crop of something. But if you're playing the averages and had to place a bet, do you bet on a crop in November or get it early but maybe attacked by armyworms?
Well, so I think that's going to be just a preference for one, because I like bow hunting. That's what I want to do. The other thing is this is what I do for a living. I kill bugs. I'm going to work. I know I can kill bugs. I'm going to plant when I think I can get a good, pretty food plot, and I'll deal with the bugs. Yeah. I mean, that's just my thoughts. I'm not, I understand if I got a lease in some other state and I can't get up there and I know it's going to be a problem or whatever, that's one thing. Then I might think a little more about armyworms. But again, I mean, if you're a big bow hunter, I don't want to wait till November to have a pretty food plot to hunt on. I want to deal with armyworms and go on.
We're wired to the food plot world. I mean, our phone rings all day long. I don't really remember people having much problem once September gets here playing
Same,
farmworm.
yeah.
I mean, there is some
That's my
isolated,
rule of
but
thumb,
not
for sure.
not the majority.
And I'm saying they better be prepared this year
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I have seen him before. He knows
I've
more than me, but I've seen it even years ago. And I would also just, evidentiary, not research driven, but it just seems like so many years of dealing with this. The places I've had an outbreak before become more likely targets in subsequent years for whatever reason. Maybe moths do that, but I've seen when we just go back to this sanctuary we plant, it's like 20 years now or so. And we went for a long time and never had armyworm problems. It's surrounded by timber for miles. But once we ever started having armyworm problems, we've had it every single year there. So if you've ever had, I'm going to guess, if you've had armyworm problems with your bow hunting, especially planting bow crops in, you got to get them in early.
Yeah.
You better be prepared. I mean, people really should be prepared. And maybe that's one thing we need to do, or put it on a website, or go down and have, here's a list. Here's a way to prepare in case. Because from my experience as just the average Joe guy doing stuff, not, a big farmer.
Good point.
If you're not prepared, you're in trouble. And especially this year, as the products probably may not even be available. So if you really have had problems before, you really ought to be prepared, in my opinion. Sure. And you know what? That stuff will keep for years if you don't use it anyway. Just be safe with it if you don't. But there's more than just buying some chemical to being prepared, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, that makes great sense. Well,
Got to have the rig ready.
Bronson, you're raising your hand again.
Angus, in that case with Toxie, is that over time through management, he's created a landscape that's just more conducive to colonization?
Is he imprinting armyworm?
Oh man, yeah.
It's hard to say, and I mean, it may be that in those food plots you've been working on it for a few years, and you did get the fertility right and all this kind of stuff. But we use history of fields all the time to make management decisions for them. And I mean, I use that line a lot. If you've had a history of this pest, now why do you have a history and the guy across the turn road don't? That's questions that we can't answer. I got people all the time that I got bollworms in these beans, but across the road I don't. What do you think it is? And we don't know the answer to that. But these mobs are smart. They're going to try to find the best place that they think that their offspring can make it and produce another generation. What they're looking for, we don't know. If we knew that, we could have pesticide free everything, because we could break that cycle. But people work careers on that and never figure it out. But I do like what you said. If you have a history of a problem, you might have the problem.
Just be ready.
And we use that line a lot.
Yeah. So look, Bronson, while you're here, I wanted to make sure while we're talking about pests, what's the latest going on with any advances in wild pigs that might be on the horizon to help guys with? We hear there's something in Texas that might be interesting.
I think they're genetically linked to armyworm.
Yeah. We're talking about plagues. Let's talk about hogs.
They disperse and colonize like
yeah,
I feel like they're first cousins or something.
Probably, in my opinion, I think the biggest advancement in the past 5 years is we have more people educated and doing something about it, and more programs. For example, here in Mississippi, now we have the Mississippi Department of Ag and Commerce now has a program as well, coupled with wildlife services and some of the aerial gunning that they'll do in the Delta and places like that. That's probably the biggest advance right now that has resulted in more pigs dying. There's always toxicants in the mix. I think that's going to happen. It still hadn't happened yet. And people always ask why, and it's because it's a toxicant, and we got to be sure that it's safe for the non-target species. I don't want to wipe out a sounder of pigs if it's going to cost me deer, turkey, etc.
Sure.
And that can be a real big problem, especially on the turkey. So we want to be careful with that. I've heard a little bit, Bobby, about the deal out of Texas. I have no experience with it yet. I don't know of any research confirming the results yet. Let's keep our fingers crossed that it is a solution.
Yeah. Well, I know you will know as soon as it does. I happened to be in an NRCS office this past week and saw this brochure on wild pigs. And of course, it's by some other people that I recognize their names, but Bronson Strickland's down there at the bottom. So
Hey.
I would encourage people to go by their NRCS and pick up its Wild Pig Management. It's pretty interesting.
And you can go to our website. If you just Google Wild Pig Info, all that information is there, free to download. You can print it, whatever, but there's plenty of information, trapping information, what to do, how to do it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, look, guys, we've learned a lot today. There's no doubt. I didn't know they migrated.
Yeah, just understand their life cycle period helps you. Going to help us be a better gamekeeper. You know what I mean?
I feel like the world's a better place with somebody like Angus out there that's studying that
killing
thing.
bugs.
So let's, we did jump around. That's an ADD session because we're so fascinated with it. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody cover it, and we had lots of questions. But what's a basic plan? Again, I believe that if you, like I've said before, I learned for me personally with growing this duck food and millets, if I'm not prepared, it's too late. So the rig is set up on a small tractor we can spray with. It's sitting there ready to go. The chemical's on the shelf. The formula's ready for whoever, and so in literally in an hour's time from an outbreak that you find, you can get right on it. I've literally sprayed really, really short millet, 3, 4, 5 inches, and you could see yellow spots. And I walked out in it. Let's just say maybe 15 acres worth. And there's yellow spots. When I walk out to the yellow spot, it's just, you can just see like maggots already. And as I'm spraying in the heat of the day, you can see the yellow spots getting bigger, literally before I get through spraying like an hour's worth. They're destroying it that fast. I'm not kidding. So for the average guy, I was just going to say maybe, I would recommend anybody who's really interested in this, get one of these entomology nets somewhere, honestly. And you may learn a lot more than just about armyworms by, it's for bugs. It was not developed just for armyworms. Access to a spray rig, predetermined formula by somebody really knowledgeable, the label, an expert, your local, extension office or whatever. Pick your chemical ahead of time. Be sure it's something, appropriate, fits the bill. I would just go ahead and make that plan and have it prepared. And above all else, consult whoever you need to for the safety. And because then, as he said, you don't need to just throw it on the back of a four-wheeler and haphazardly spray even what's deemed a safer chemical. You need to be very, very, very careful too. So I'm just giving people advice I would be prepared if you are going to address this year, because if you aren't prepared, it's going to be too late when you find them, I think.
So, and I completely agree 100%. That was a really good line item thing that you need to be thinking about. But I want to back up and say one more thing here that we never talk about really. We just assume. But I've learned this year that you should never assume this. One, you mentioned a while ago the Extension Service. We have agents in all 82 counties, and they're there to help. If they don't know the answer, they know who to call, us or whoever. And they know exactly who works in what area. But here's something we never think about. Is a lot of people, particularly, I'm guessing, food plot people and a lot of pasture people too, believe it or not, don't know how to calibrate their sprayer. Yeah. Calibration is huge. Yes. And I think we have a blog that all of our row crop people contribute to. It's called Mississippi, spell out Mississippi-crops.com. And there's a search bar. You look for anything you want in there, and it's row crop related. But we have a tab on there called Publications, and under that Publications, we have a calibration made easy that my colleagues and myself put together several years ago, where we really tried to get calibration into layman terms and make people understand it. But even if you have that four-wheeler sprayer or whatever, if you don't know your GPA, your volume that you're putting out, you're guessing at what you're doing. You might not even be putting out a rate that'll kill an armyworm. Right. Because what this thing's going to say, if you're putting out Intrepid and it says put out 4 ounces per acre, you got to know your volume. I mean, you got to know your speed, your volume. I mean, it's not just throw something in the tank and go across the field. You might not be putting enough out to kill anything.
Exactly.
I get that question a lot about, what percent solution do I need to have in my tank? Yeah. And the answer is how many acres or, what's the square footage of your field and calibrate your sprayer.
How wide your sprayer.
You want to put out a per acre rate, not a 2.5% solution.
And I'll tell you this, even if you look at that publication, as hard as we tried to make a complicated subject easy, again, if you got questions about it, your local county agent or whatever, call them. They'll come out and help you do this. If they don't know how to do it, they'll call one of us. We'll show you how to calibrate that thing, whether it's a multi-boom nozzle, a single boom, whatever. We can show you how to do all of that. But that's like the most important thing out of everything we've talked about. You got to be able to deliver the amount of product that the label's calling for.
And it's a lot easier to do nowadays. Most of the equipment has a speedometer on it, so you can dial in exactly how fast you're going.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, that's a good point. That calibration is. Look, Mike, you need to jump on the internet when you get a chance and download that for us, and maybe we can
where
put
was
a
that
link
website?
on.
What was that website?
It's a blog that all of our row crop specialists, whether you're an entomologist, weed science, plant pathologist, whatever, it's dedicated to ag, and it links you back to the Mississippi State Extension website on most of it. It's just a concise place where we can find stuff, but it's Mississippi-crops.com. That's where we put all of our information to our farmers out weekly.
Cool.
Save that
It's a great resource. Mississippi.
We push our podcast to it as well. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a great resource.
we'll make that link available, guys. We'll put that in our when we do this post.
Angus, I think that's our second most common recommendation with extension. Number 1, get a soil test. Number 2, calibrate your sprayer.
Calibrate your sprayer.
There you go. Yeah. So what questions are we not asking? Toxie just brought up a good list there that a guy needs to have. Is there anything else y'all can think of that I just want to make sure we cover it all?
I was literally, that was what I was going to add, but because of what
Bronson.
we just said, nobody does it.
Yeah.
And, with my
you're right.
clientele, so to speak, 1% of the people do it.
Yeah.
And it's usually, we're not even talking about dealing with armyworms. It's getting the appropriate herbicide, the concentration of herbicide. And I've been guilty of it way back when as well, especially when you're dealing with something like glyphosate. Doesn't matter as much, but with some of these other herbicides, you got to get the concentration right. Yeah. So what better way to be prepared when you've got to act really quick is calibrate your sprayer.
Yeah, so Toxie's point's well taken. I'd also like to add that you guys need to wear safety glasses and
gloves.
Pull on some gloves.
Yes.
Just to be careful. Maybe, little trouble, but gosh, we all want to.
That goes with herbicides too. Any of these chemicals, any of these things,
Yeah.
just act like they're deadly. It should always be that safe.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Angus, you look like you spend a lot of time outside looking at fields and looking for bugs, I guess.
Killing bugs, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got probably the best tan I've had in a long time this year. But yeah, so I got shorts on it here. But this time of year, I wore my, this week it's been really hot. But I actually wore my swim trunks Monday because we get so wet during the day. Yeah.
I bet so. Wow.
And I change clothes before I get back in the vehicle because it's just horrible. But yeah, we in the field every day around the state. And what we're doing is we're putting out trials. We're answering farmer calls, consultant calls, industry calls, but at the same time, we're putting out insecticide trials so we can tell our growers what to kill armyworms with, what to kill whatever with. A lot of these pests are very, economically damaging to our crops, and that's what my job is to help them avoid catastrophic loss to their crops. So we're constantly out evaluating everything that we can to make them more profitable.
Well, once again, Mississippi State just impresses you guys.
Yeah. Of course,
everything that we.
Why you Auburnite? Why would you act so surprised? Of course we do.
So somebody needs to make sure that baseball field over there doesn't get any armor.
No, trust me. I guarantee you that one's on the top.
Somebody's on that up in here.
Yeah, heads will roll if that one gets an armyworm in it.
That's exactly right.
There we go, man.
There it is, man. So, I got one last question. So, like a football field that's highly fertilized and watered in the fall, with the lights that would be on in practices during August, would that attract moths and create potential outbreaks?
I think lights definitely bring moths in. Whether that means they'll come in and lay there or not, I don't know. But they're definitely hitting football fields. I give somebody some Intrepid to spray a football field in South Mississippi the other day that they were ravaging, something safe. So, whether or not that would actually, it brings them in, but whether it brings them in to the point that they're going to be worse because it brought those in, I'm not real sure.
Yeah,
about that,
just a question I had. So
it's a
I'm
good
just amazed.
question, it's a good question. You would think it would, but I don't know. they disperse when the lights go out. So who knows?
Well, I'm just amazed at this whole migration and learning about that and how these waves move north. And maybe I'm not smart enough to understand what's left back down south. If they're all moving north and laying eggs, where's the base of these?
Well, there's always going to be a portion of the populations that don't necessarily migrate or do different things. So there's always some residual left behind. If it wouldn't, I mean, the alternative would be a species would go extinct.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right. So there's always, going to be a remnant in different places that's going to remain behind.
They call that the Delta variant. Yeah. The South Delta. The South Delta variant.
Yeah, that's where we got a Delta variant of Armyworm this year, too.
He's going to get us in trouble.
And before you get scared off, you better, when people hear this, it may be too late. There's been such a run on the chemicals and stuff.
Yeah.
But it looks expensive, but at 4 ounces an acre, that's 30 acres plus in a jug.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and it does. In my learning, it keeps, if you don't let it, leave it in 100-degree heat, it keeps for years.
Keeps well.
Yeah.
And just really put it stored in a safe, locked up place. And, you're prepared for years if you need to be.
Yeah. We use some of your buddies and buy some.
We used some the other day that I just had in the chemical shed that was probably 8 or 10 years old, and it still worked. Shake it up real good.
Yeah, I've seen herbicides actually lose their shelf life, but I hadn't, not yet on these.
Well, gosh, this has been fascinating, guys. Do we have anything else to ask Dudley? I would like to, let's hold your Ask Dudley till next week. Since we're going to share this podcast with some other folks.
Sure.
But is there any other questions? Lanny, you always have a question.
My stomach's growling. I smell it.
You just say whoa to me, or I'd keep him here all day. So
my tapeworm's acting up again.
Yeah, it is. It is. So look, this has been fascinating. Bronson, you're always a great guest. You wormed your way in here once again.
What a great analogy.
Yeah. And Angus, it's been fascinating meeting you. I've heard nothing. People told me that you were just like the South's leading entomologist.
Oh, I don't know about that. Look, I got some great colleagues around, not just in Mississippi, but in the whole southern region, and they're every bit as good or better than me. And we work as a team on everything we do. So. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Sounds like you got a good. Sound like a lot of bugs are in trouble if you're on.
That's right. So I better look out. Angus on the case.
A lot of big farmers have a new very best friend.
I bet they do.
Yeah. And
Angus got plenty of places to hunt.
He does.
So look, Bronson, we hope your listeners have enjoyed this at the Deer University and the crop doctors. Look, we just look farmers. We have so much respect for what they do.
Absolutely, backbone of the country.
So look, if we don't have any more questions, I guess we'll close this thing out and. Look, we appreciate everybody listening. And if you're listening, if you enjoy this, we sure would appreciate if you give us a review. It would really help our...
A good review.
Yeah, well, there's an honest review so we can learn from it. So
or share it with someone else too.
Yeah, that's right.
Spread the word.
That's right. And watch our television show Tuesday nights, The Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak. It's very informative. So I guess that's it. So why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Mac.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.